Kohl's quilts. I came on here because I had an idea of a new quilt pattern that I wanted to do, and I think that I'm gonna try another quilt along. I've been lucky enough that I've had some awesome people donate some scraps to me lately because they're like, oh, I've noticed you use a lot of small pieces in your quilting, and I said, yes, I will always take scraps. Also, I don't tend to get rid of my scraps anyways. I'm collecting scraps, and so I kept thinking I want to make a scrappy quilt. I came up with a design for a quilt that is foundation paper piecing, but it's only one block. And what I mean by that is there's one block design, and then that block design just repeats throughout the whole quilt, but just the fabrics change. So sort of like a pixel type of quilt, but not squares. I'm calling it Kaleidoscope. It's an owl and it's baby blanket size. It's like 40 by 60. And so what I'm gonna be doing is I'm going to be posting a page, which is like 2 blocks, at least like 2 blocks once a week, that will be going up on my quilt along page. And so you can download those blocks and you can do it with me. And then eventually, once we've all gone through it and it's done, then it will be up on my website to purchase. So if you want to do it for free, you got to do it now while we are quilting along. Let me explain a little bit about my plan of how to do it. It's a little bit challenging because since it's designed for you to use scraps, I am not including a list of how much fabric you need or all the individual colors that are in the pattern, because the idea is that you look at the type of color you want and you dig through your scraps and you find something that's pretty close. The way I've decided to communicate this is with swatches and a grayscale. Here's an example of the first block. This, you're working from the inside out, and traditionally I've used ABC to indicate the order of the pieces, but because there are so many in this one, I'm using numbers. If you look right here, it says 1/3. So what that means, the first number 1, that means that's the first piece, right? 2, here's the second piece. Here where it says A1 in the square, that's the name of the block, so that when you look at the whole design, you can see which block it is. The numbers after the slash indicate the lightness or darkness on a grayscale. And then I have these circles that show you the actual colors. So if you don't have a color printer, you can print it out in black and white, and then you can pull up either the blocks or the image, like the whole design with the grid, on your phone or your laptop and look at the colors to see if you can find something close. So when you print this out, you get a general idea, but some of the dark colors tend to all look the same. So that's where the numbers are helpful, right? So the grayscale is 1 is black, 10 is basically white. If I have a bunch of dark circles, but one says 1 and one says 3, then that means 1 is black and 3 is like dark, probably brown, right? Now, as far as the tone, which is the warmth or coolness of the color, like is it red, is it yellow, is it orange? That's not indicated with a letter or a number, that's just indicated with the circle. So if you feel like looking at these circles, you can't really tell what it is, that's when I would go back and look at the design grid in the pattern so that you can sort of get an idea. It is a lot of neutrals. It's a lot of browns, tans, grays. There is some yellow, there's some blues. There are a few that are sort of green, but I was really excited about the design, but I was kind of like thinking, do I even have this many neutrals in my scraps? But we'll see. But here's another thing about grayscales. If you follow the grayscale, you could theoretically use whatever tones you wanted. So let's say, for example, that you used all purples, but you followed the grayscale. It's still gonna look like an owl's face. It's gonna look like a purple owl. So there's some leeway there. I feel like using the grayscale is the most important part because that's what's gonna help it visually read as an owl's face. Here's what the blocks look like. I've printed the seam allowance on there so you can cut along the seam allowance because all the blocks are the same. There are no sections where you have to cut the block into pieces and sew it back together. So in that way, it's really simple. I think it's probably gonna be the most beginner pattern that I've created. If you are new to foundation paper piecing, you do need to have a basic understanding of foundation paper piecing, but I do have a few videos that sort of walk through that. The blocks are a little smaller than I normally do. I usually do 7.5 inch blocks because that's the biggest you can fit on a piece of paper. The reason why I made them smaller was because with the design I was doing, if the box got bigger and bigger, the pieces would get bigger, and I wanted to keep the pieces all relatively the same size and relatively small because the idea is that we're using scraps. If you wanted to do this quilt and you didn't have enough scraps or you didn't want to use scraps, you could buy some jelly rolls. I mean, if you look at the colors you see in the owl, some yellows, some browns, some grays, probably get away with doing that too. I am not going to be posting a video every time I create blocks like I did with the other quilts along. I may periodically post videos, but basically I will just be adding blocks to my website about once a week. I'm sure I'll post a video when it's complete so that you guys can see it. Another thing that I want to mention is if you are in the Western Washington area, I am going to be teaching a quilting class at Bellevue College. So most of the classes that I teach usually are like, you know, it's 2 hours, it's 3 hours, maybe it's a 1-day 6-hour workshop. They're often at Quilting Mayhem. I have done some online classes. I've done some speaking at guilds. But I'm excited about this one. It's through the continuing education department at Bellevue. I'm excited because it's actually an 8-week course. And so it's once a week for 2 hours for 8 weeks, and I walk you through from how to thread your sewing machine all the way to quilting and binding, but it is about foundation paper piecing. So it walks you through how to sew, sort of the basics, and then how to do some really, really simple foundation paper piecing. And you sort of work into like designing your own, and we create some blocks and then we sew the blocks together, and at the end of the course you will have a little quilt. So if you have done foundation paper piecing before and you're very familiar with it, probably not the class for you. If you are a quilter and you have done a lot of types of quilting but you haven't done foundation paper piecing, I feel like that would be really great for you. If you have never quilted and you're like, I don't even know where to start, it would also be great for you. I'm hoping if that goes well to possibly in the future do an 8-week course there that's specifically about quilt design. Because when I've taught my quilt design classes, I always feel like there wasn't enough time. So I really feel like an 8-week course would really give people enough to be able to really learn how to design their own quilts. But we'll see, because I know not everyone that follows me is from around here. So also, if you're in the Western Washington area, we have coming up the Stray Threads Quilt Show that's going to be in Linwood in April. I will be there. I will have 2 other quilt patterns that are going to be coming out sometime this year. Look out for that. If you aren't already on my subscriber list on my website, please go to coolsquilts.com and sign up. Anytime I have a new pattern coming out, or if I have a new class or anything like that, I will send out emails so that you all know what's going on. So I hope I get some people that'll do this. If you start on it and you have any questions, or the way I've decided to do it doesn't make sense, please let me know. Leave a comment, send me an email, and I'm excited to see what it's going to end up looking like.